Hello back to our beautiful series, Berlin Doula Conversations with Jaguar, Shanae and Annie. And me and Shanae are just going to talk to Annie about her journey.
Okay, I'll start with my question. At what point in your life did you realise you wanted to be a doula? And what led you to your path and your journey? And
Yeah.
I want to know the story.
I almost feel like the shortest answer would be the moment I heard what a doula was the moment I felt like I needed to be a doula.
But I love your story.
Yeah, but I'll tell the story.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's a really cool story.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I had been working, you have to just support yourself with jobs. And so always, instead of getting an internship and whatever, I was always kind of like, I would rather work in a nursery. I love babies. I just love babies.
Mm-hmm.
And I was the youngest child. So I always dreamed of having a little baby brother or sister that I never had. And I wanted to be there to take care of them. So I just would get jobs like that. And I was a camp counselor, which I loved. And they always put me with the youngest possible little girls because it was so clear that was my forte, to be with the young ones. And then, I graduated university, and it was that moment where but now you get a real job. Now you do something that has capitalistic value and that has health benefits and that provides a certain amount of security and social merit, but I felt conflicted because I just decided in and of myself for my personal development, I didn't feel ready to commit to doing work that I didn't enjoy. Because I love so many different kinds of work. I have so many interests that for me to commit to doing a job that wasn't something I was interested in was the one non-negotiable that I decided not to go for. So I moved to New York City to pursue art and music, and I was working on a few kind of theatrical projects, musical projects, all of which were very low paying or non-paying jobs. And so in order to live in New York City, you really need a job that pays you money.
Yeah.
So I kind of walked around the streets and made a decision in and of myself in my mind that I was going to do something I loved. So I found a job babysitting with a family that had a 5-month-old at the time who I'm still best friends with, and she's now a little older, 2.5. Oh my gosh, but I just really connected with that job. I loved going to work every day and doing that. I loved that was how I was surviving at the time. And so that mother, you don't know this part of the story, but that mother had a lot of mother friends in Brooklyn, and a lot of them were pregnant or having babies, their first or second or third. And I sort of became the go-to person, do you know what I mean, for the postpartum time. And I was sort of being referred to one mom who I would have, some time with and spend time with her and her baby, kind of breastfeeding counseling and things like that. And then she would say, you know what, my friend could really use your help. And so when each person found a more steady babysitter, I kind of moved on to the next. And I had no idea that at the time I was a postpartum doula.
Without even knowing.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Well, but then it's also something very natural, isn't it, in a way?
Absolutely.
For your being. So
Absolutely.
it's not something that you had to now
Yeah.
steady.
Yeah, there was nobody saying Annie, you better put a label on this. It was just so normal.
Yeah.
And so I was doing that work, loving it, and all at the same time, of course, my steady job, part-time babysitting, was with this one little baby. And when I would hold her in her rocking chair and, give her breast milk bottles, we would rock, and I would look at this pile of books that was next to her rocking chair. In those super quiet moments with babies. And there was this book on top of the pile that was the most delicious looking book I've ever seen. And I had never seen anything like it. And I don't know why, but there were many months in which I stared at the book, but never ever touched it.
It's so magical, that part of the story.
I just wanted it. Like I was like so interested in it, but something about it was like, it almost felt too special for me.
Wow.
Do you know what I mean? And also, it wasn't my book too, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't even my book, and so I felt a little, So one day I was going away for a Christmas break, and just my own Christmas break. I was going to go home for a week, and I asked the mom, an amazing woman, Eve. I said, Eve, I saw this book in Celine's room, and I'm just wondering, could I borrow this book? I think it's called Spiritual Midwifery. I couldn't even pronounce the title. I didn't even know what that word was. I didn't even know what it was meaning. And she said, Annie, that's so weird, but when I was grocery shopping today, I had like a vision of you reading that book. Like, of course you can borrow it, take it, whatever. She's like, it was a gift from my friend. I never got a chance to read it. It's just there. So I took it home like a ruby, and I opened it up, and it's such an unusual piece of literature. It's firsthand stories, if you're not familiar, of mothers who tell their birth stories, giving birth on a commune in Tennessee.
Ina May Gaskin.
Yeah.
Ina May Gaskin is the midwife who compiled the stories and was present for most of the births. And she's just she was, I guess I would consider her my first guru, just from that experience and then reading her other things.
Mm-hmm.
So I read that book, talked about it with Eve, and she mentioned, doula this, doula that, and I heard the word for the first time, and it was ringing in my ears, and I said, what is that? What is a doula? And then she told me what it was, and I was like,
yeah,
I've got you. And then I hit the libraries really hard, because I haven't given birth myself. So it was definitely a part of me that was like, well, can I come to this work as somebody who hasn't had my own child, at least in this lifetime? And is that a valid thing to do? And I just read, honestly, since that moment until now, I've read, because I keep a log, so I know what I have looked at and what I want to read, more than 35 books on this topic. I just found everything that the library had, interlibrary loan, whatever. And then at that point, I decided to certify with an organization that I really connected with. And from then on, it's been a really big part of my life.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, and also a funny way to come to it, because I sort of realized, well, a part of this work I was already doing. I just didn't have a name for it, and I didn't have a community supporting me, That's what I've gained from the training and everything.
Yeah.
And also too, I really feel that there's two things that are so interesting about your story, because the feminine, there's so many aspects of the feminine in our world that haven't been recognized and acknowledged. And so many, I think what's going to be happening more and more now is emerging professions, new professions, emerging professions, because a lot of the feminine work hasn't been acknowledged as being something that you can earn money with,
Exactly.
and that is valuable, and that is really amazing and precious and powerful. And to me, that's just, in your story is inherent that part of your nature, part of your gifts, part of your skills was something really very, very, very valuable, and even if you hadn't done the certification, still has the same value. And
so true.
I think about this a lot, this kind of devaluation in capitalistic systems of emotional labor and empathetic labor, and how often women have to do this kind of labor in an unpaid circumstance or an underpaid circumstance when they should actually be
expected as well.
It's expected, right? There's a sense of entitlement to that women will do this work. And I think there's also that feeling of but I love it so much. How can I make this a career, and how can I ask for money for something that I enjoy so much?
Which is also weird conditioning, isn't it?
Isn't it odd?
So we're why would I be able to earn money with something I love?
Exactly.
So it's a thing I ask surfers all the time.
Yeah.
How can you get paid when you surf in the ocean on a board and do your hobby, what you're doing? But it's it's kind of like that. It's we're just doing that, and it's
yeah. So it took a while to
we'll
figure
work on the
out.
sponsors, but
so it's kind of like being paid for being who you are.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, and it took also a little time to realize that who I am is special. I think that's hard for a lot of women.
Yeah.
You sort of think, well, but anybody could do it. I really am a big advocate of the difference between, you have to be discerning about what is simple is not necessarily easy.
Yeah.
Doula work in a certain sense is extremely simple, to show up and be fully present for someone and present for their needs. That does not mean it's easy, and that does not mean everyone is well suited to do it. You know?
Takes a very special quality.
It's a valuable gift to be able to bring yourself to that space.
Yeah. And I know for sure that that's also the other point which I think is interesting, you know, you saying that you're not a mother and that you haven't given birth. And I think it's so beautiful for you to recognize your gifts, to recognize, which is so apparent. I mean, I think you're such an amazing woman, an amazing birth keeper.
Thank you.
And it's so apparent in everything that you do. And I mean, I love sending women that I work with to Annie, and I know that they're going to be in the best hands ever.
Thank you.
And I think that's something that is part of this whole journey of A, acknowledging the feminine, and B, our own soul qualities and what we're really good at, and beginning to really own that.
Yeah.
And I can see that you've been doing that.
It wasn't like an automatic thing, but I've gotten closer to an understanding of that, I think. Yeah.
Because that's, I mean, I've heard this story before, and I heard it in a course called Rites of Courage, and it's like courageous. It takes courage.
And I didn't start doing it like for me, you know, I didn't start, like I came to that, but this was really working with families postpartum. We all know it sounds so lovey-dovey and glowy and lovely, but it's very difficult. You know, you walk into a house and, like, you know, people are half naked and they've just gone to the other world and come back, and they're dazed, you know, and like you have to hold that space for them and be with them in that moment. Like, it became so clear so quickly that the birth experience that a family had that I was working with was setting the entire tone for their postpartum life and their parenting journey. And it was like, I was like, I really need to do something to affect a positive change a little earlier on in this process. You know, it was like if I could have gotten to them before they gave birth and maybe gave them some pointers or something, it was the most natural kind of drive to bring my skills to a place where they would be useful, because it was like, I know that this kind of support could benefit people. And then it was like, well, lo and behold, there are lots of other women all over the world who had the same idea. If we could just support people throughout their birth process, they would have a better tone set for parenting, or not a better, but maybe they would feel more prepared, or maybe they would come in with a sense of empowerment rather than a sense of helplessness, which can be a very difficult challenge for some people.
And also, you've talked about something that we'll cover in another time, in another space of conversation, but this postpartum period, at least in some of my studies, was seen like the Cinderella period, you know, the period that gets ignored, that gets forgotten. And we won't talk about it now, but it's really good point that it is such an important part, and it's, you know, it's a whole nother phase.
Totally.
And you know that too, I mean.
Whole separate.
Yeah.
And some clients, they try to ask you, I'm like, okay, first we just need to give birth to the baby, and yes, I can give you a few points, but a lot of it you're going to be learning on the job, and a lot of it, you know, or on the day, you're going to be learning a lot. But if we spoke a bit more about it, I don't know, would people be willing to have, you know what I mean? Because sometimes it is so tough, and if we did explain how it really was, or something like this, it would be so confusing for them, because they're like, what? Hang on, I'm growing a baby, and I'm thinking about the birth, and I'm thinking about breastfeeding, and how do I swaddle a baby, and oh my god, my nipples are going to do that, you know, like it's so intense for the woman. So I think like concentrating on, okay, just one thing, and you are going to have help after, and you're going to be guided and supported and loved after.
I ask every birth client, who's going to be around to support you after you give birth. It's such an important question. I mean, my first La Leche League meeting, when I was just attending to learn more about breastfeeding, La Leche League is an amazing international organization that is just community gatherings to support women who breastfeed. And the like first comment that was made in the La Leche League meeting that I was visiting was, well, I spent all this time and all of this energy preparing for my birth, but I should have spent all that energy preparing for breastfeeding. It's a whole journey in and of itself. And that was like, oh, like light bulb. That was such a like concise way to phrase that. Yeah, it's all part of it. It's all important.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, I think it needs a whole conversation by itself.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Postpartum.
Yeah.
And definitely, completely, absolutely, 100%, a very important part of the birth journey.
Yeah.
But thank you for sharing your journey, your story.
My pleasure.